Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Asha Kothari Chaudhary and I'm a professor of English at Guwahati University. The course that we are doing is Indian Writing in English, and the module that we are looking at now is called Activist Theatre in India, and the play that is focused on in this module is Dina Mehta's Getting Away with Murder. Let us begin with asking one simple question. But however, this question is also a very, very fundamental one. What do we mean by a theatrical performance? Each play carries within it the possibilities of performance, which is an altogether different experience that can turn a written work of art into an event that is spatial and temporal at the same time. A theatrical performance of a play is a collective experience by a huge gathering, but this is not a necessary element. A theatrical performance, however, is possible only if there are at least two people in the set. You have to have a member of the audience and you have to have a performer. Now, it is certainly a different form of experience than mere reading a play, that individually will keep a reader with a book and open to various kinds of interpretations that you might arrive at even if you've just read a play. Performance, however, will involve a real physical being and a body and a voice and movements that will enhance its impact on the audiences. So, having understood what performance means, what then is activist theatre? Activism generally involves the idea of generating awareness on various social, cultural, and political evils. Now, activism can be direct activism like political activism, or economic activism to bring about political and economic changes, or it can be an indirect form of activism like representing and critiquing the social problems in literature. Having understood what theatre performance means and what activism means, let us bring these two concepts together. What then is activist theatre? Let us try to look at its emergence and growth. Among all art forms, theatre seems to have the greatest scope for becoming the agent for social change. A theatrical piece can be considered as activist when it makes an effort to represent and critique the existing social problems and shows the possible means of overcoming them. Theatre has ample scope for activism, as it is the doing aspect that sets it apart from its written aspect. The whole concept of theatre, having the capacity to bring social change, seems to emerge from the ideas of the German playwright and director Bertolt Brecht. Brecht, following the Marxist perspective, strategizes his plays to appeal to the intellect of his audience and not to generate empathy or sympathy. He believes that theatre should educate its audiences to bring about socially responsible change. That, to him, is the be-all and end-all of theatre and theatrical performance. Like Brecht, Augusto Boal also believes that theatrical performance has the potential to make political and social changes. And the chief purpose behind Boal's formulation of forum theatre was to teach people about how one may bring social changes by defying oppressive norms. Forum theatre allowed the spectators an opportunity to discover solutions to their problems by directly intervening into the theatrical event and becoming a part of the event itself. This, in some ways, is what we might refer to as the transformative power of theatre. Another trend that is noticeable in the field of world theatre in the 20th century which aims at exploring this transformative power of performance as well as the social responsibility of the artist and the audience. The trend is seen to be initiated by the Yugoslavian performance artist Maria Abramovic, who likes to call herself the grandmother of performance art. She uses her performances as a means of expressing and encountering violence and tries to erase the boundaries between the artist and the audience. How does then, in the realm of things that we have just discovered or spoken about, how does activism and Indian theatre mesh with each other? What do they mean to each other? How does Indian theatre deal with activism within itself? Theatre as a means for activism to generate social change is yet to develop really in India, unlike that of the theatre scene in the West. However, we do have a number of playwrights who have written plays which seem to carry the touch of activism in terms of choice of theme. The plays of Vijay Tendulkar, for instance, some of those by Mahesh Dattani, or some that have been written by Girish Karnad or Manjula Padmanabhan or Dina Mehta, to name a few, exhibit a concern for the current socio-cultural and political issues and how they affect the lives of the common people. Now, the very act of scripting plays on the crucial social problems could be regarded as a part of the activist agenda by the playwrights. It is an act of resistance against the existing social evils through the literary imagination. To be enacted, the social issues must be voiced and scripted first, and this is exactly what these playwrights have begun to do. Mahesh Dattani has made a considerable effort to use theatre for staging the oppressive norms of Indian society, which silences the voice of minorities like the community of the gays or lesbians, transgenders or women. For example, social activism is the key intention behind his well-known play 30 Days in September, where Dattani writes the play commissioned by Rahi, which is a support group that helps the women survivors of incest. However, we find in India we do not see any such radical activism via theatre as we see in the context of the West. There is no comparable example that we might put forward for you. Nevertheless, this is a genre that is rising of late, and writing has been seen to be a means of resistance or activism. Many Indian playwrights have taken up writing as a means of protest against various social evils, and they attempt to represent various socio-political issues such as gender, caste, patriarchy, politics, sexuality, violence, and so on that affect our everyday lives. So let us focus now on the play that we are dealing with in terms of close reading in this module, Getting Away with Murder, which deals with the problem of violence against women and female children that is rampant in Indian society. The play represents the story of Sonali, who is a victim of child sexual abuse, and the after effects of this violent incident on her adult life. Alongside this, the play also represents the agonized lives of a couple of other women, such as Mallika, Razia, and Thelma. They are all victims of gender-specific violence in some way or the other. Thus, the play aims at representing the presence of various covert or overt forms of violence against women, and shows how such acts of violence and abuse finally affects the private or psychological lives of the characters. The activist note of the play lies in the very act of scripting a play on the basis of a problem which really needs serious public and political attention and intervention. Not only does Dina Mehta choose social realism as her mode of representation to represent the society as it is, But her play also stands as a critique of the society which oppresses its women, and thereby her writing offers a resistance to the same. It is a kind of resistance against social evils by using the power of the literary imagination and the power of performance. Dealing with the abuse experienced by Sonali, the chief protagonist, the play takes us to the lives of a number of women characters who experience various forms of abuse in their everyday life. Now, despite being well educated and having a very modern outlook, these women fail to escape this kind of suffering. And the play makes it clear that traditional constraints that the society maintains towards its women are so deep-rooted in the minds of women that they fail to welcome changes practically and conform or continue to bear the constraints and boundaries that are created by the patriarchal traditions. The play begins at a restaurant where Mallu or Mallika is waiting for a friend Sonali to join her. The beginning introduces a very common problem that women face in their everyday life from various strangers. A stranger in the restaurant disturbs her so much that she is forced to leave before Sonali reaches the place. This kind of a vulnerability of women to such obnoxious kinds of behavior by men is quite common in public places. It works to restrict their personal liberty to move or to act freely. First, the stranger ogles at her, then takes up her fallen serviette, and then approaches her to give it back. No matter how she tries to avoid him, he follows her. The reader and the audience can easily perceive the sexual innuendos that motivate his behavior. Now, Mallu not only faces abuses by outsiders, even her own partner, Mr. Pingley, also tries to abuse her in her own office. Through characters like Pingley, Mehta has represented the dominant attitude towards women as merely an object of sex. Even the typist in her foodstuff agency, who undergoes the same in the hands of Pingley. Okay, we can cut the last line out. I'll not say it also. Okay. Now, Thelma is a low-rank employee who suffers a great deal when Mallika compels her to resign from her job. And one day, Pingley finds Thelma making a long-distance phone call, and taking advantage of this, he starts to blackmail her, saying that he will disclose her transgression before Mallika, and Thelma would then be dismissed. Now, the fear of losing her job requires Thelma to obey Pingley, who goes on abusing her in various ways. Being unable to tolerate Pingley's continued wicked gestures and vulgar talk, Thelma finally decides to quit. It is interesting that Mallu is the one who strategically will save Thelma from Pingley's trap when she confides in her. And Mallu's stance here will indicate the emerging change that is coming now in terms of women's empowerment in Indian society. Dina Mehta here not only represents the various forms of visible or invisible violence against women, but also shows the presence of such strong forces within women which can challenge the order of things. Mallu is capable of challenging the conspiracies of the male world represented by Pingley, and she protects Thelma from suffering further humiliation or psychological abuse. Scroll up. How much time have we taken? 30 hoega? Only 13, right? So we have a lot. I think my throat is just suffering for no reason. Oh, Sonali, we have to talk about. No. I'm trying to edit and read, right? So that is what is happening. Okay. Now, like Mahesh Dattani's 30 Days in September, which is an overt activist play, this play also deals with the long-lasting after effects of sexual victimization of film. I'll read that again. You want to take a call? Like Mahesh Dattani's 30 Days in September, which is an overtly activist play, this play also deals with the long-lasting after effects of sexual victimization of female children. Not only is the victim affected by violent acts, the lives of other people associated with the victim also get affected, and the situation gives rise to further violence and chaos. The same that we see happening in Sonali's case. Sonali, who is sexually abused by Uncle Narottam at age 8, is unable to come out of the trauma of violence, and it affects her entire adult life and taints her. Sonali's strange behavior is nothing but the direct outcome of her abused past. This, in that sense, is the throwing of the coffee mugs out into the floor in the restaurant while revealing her thoughts before Mallu may be seen as a visual sign of on the stage, suggesting her unstable mental condition. Her acute headaches, her hysterical reactions, often and hidden or unspecific anger at things, resemble the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, which seems to be also the result of her experience of her traumatic abuse in childhood. So what we look at now is Mehta effectively portraying the hysterical state of Sonali's mind by using appropriate verbal and visual signs. Sonali screams hysterically, and I am quoting, "Stop it, stop it. When I listen carefully to my thoughts, it's mother's voice I hear, and I remember all the things she taught me, and I remember anger from the past." And then she sweeps with her hand and sends all the coffee mugs and things crashing into the floor. So all of these in terms of performance works as visual signs that the audience will be easily able to grasp. Now we find that the kind of trauma that Sonali has undergone in her childhood, does it provide scope for direct on-stage representation for this incident? Since that is not possible, Mehta is aware of the negative impact of direct visual representation of such violence acts, and so the play mainly focuses on the traumatic after effects of the violent acts on Sonali and her close ones. And this troubled past that Sonali carries remains residual in her psychology and is manifest in the kind of actions and frustrations and hysteria that she displays on stage. Move. Okay. Oh, so much of it. Go up. Okay, no, I think I'll do that bit. Go slightly up. No, all up, scroll up. Right, wait. One line more, yeah. Now, Sonali's unusual behavior, along with a change in her voice, indicates her hidden psychological scars. She is unable to free herself from the terrifying memories of her being sexually abused as a child. She often regresses into her childish voice, behaving like an 8-year-old girl. She frequently looks at the mirror and gazes at her face intently. Again, in the next moment, she regains her adult voice, squirms, and laughs loudly. A close look at her character reveals that the playwright has made a concentrated attempt to highlight the presence of child sexual abuse in our society so that the reader can feel the intense damage caused by a woman's life by such crimes. We have birds disturbing us now, right? Loud bird calls. What to do? Okay, the reader, why does the reader come in OV? I don't know. We have to, okay. Okay, I'm repeating the last line now. A close look at her character reveals that the playwright has made a concentrated attempt to highlight the presence of child sexual abuse in our society so that the readers or the viewers can feel the intense damage caused to a woman's life by such crimes. And herein, the activist, not of the play, lies. What does that mean? And go back, we have to correct that. And herein, please cut the previous line. You can do that? One line, you can cut? Okay. The previous line needs to be chopped off. I'm repeating that, it's incorrect now. And herein the activist or the activism of the play is seen. Mehta not only represents, but her work stands as a critique of such heinous crimes against female children. Another aspect that Dina Mehta looks at is also the traditional notion associated with the birth of a female child or the preference for the boy child. We find that Sonali's mother neglects her and cares only for Gopal, which is evident from Sonali's speech. She says, "My mother never loved me. She had eyes only for Gopal and for him only." And so here we have again an activist voice of protest that is exposing the mores of a given patriarchal setup that Indian society is really. Scroll up. Scroll up a bit. Yeah. Dina Mehta also brings into focus the issue of violence begetting violence in getting away with murder. This is very much apparent in Sonali's case, who does not only suffers violence but also indulges in further violence as the perpetrator. Being unable to free herself from the memories of a violent past and having understood the kind of insecurity a female child has to face after her birth, Sonali decides to undergo the amniocentesis test for the second time so as to find out whether the fetus is male or female, and plans to abort it if it is the latter. Thus, she inherits the violent tradition of the female feticide and destroys her first fetus without taking any medical help. The playwright portrays here a mother who is herself a victim of sexual abuse and who commits another act of violence against her own unborn female child, turning herself into the executor or the perpetrator of violence this time round. Mehta really shows the interconnectedness between various instances of violence and exposes the drawbacks of the social system that shapes a woman's mentality. Thus, go, let it go, up, up, down, down, down. The play shows us, let me see that paragraph properly. Okay, Razia. This play shows us also that a well-educated and professional woman like Razia is also not free from violence inherent in the traditional system. She suffers for not being able to give birth to a baby, whereas the problem lies really with her husband, Habib. A doctor by profession, Razia accepts her condition as the lot of a barren woman and encourages Habib to get married to Zamina. Through the portrayal of Razia, Mehta indicates the complex network of factors that compels a woman to accept violence tacitly. In Getting Away with Murder, Dina Mehta is drawing our attention to the fact that in many cases it is really the mindset of the woman which is not ready to defy norms of patriarchy. Mehta understands that this mentality is so deep-rooted in the minds of women that even modern or educated women like Sonali, Razia or Malika will always fall into the trap and fail to break the boundaries created by a gendered patriarchal society. As Razia aptly says, and I quote, "The enemy is within, don't you see? It is in our minds, Malika, that we are underlings," unquote. This play also brings into focus some other very interestingly, This play, while it talks about female feticide and talks about female abuse, domestic violence and so on, it also touches upon a very, very important idea of witch burning, which is evident in the case of Dulka Devi in the play, who is killed in front of a police station because she is now tainted and turned into a witch, and the public or the mob is able to torture her without any intervention from the police station. Besides, we find that the religious system in India is to such a great extent supportive of this systematic killing of women, and the village priest we find in the play has a major role in turning Dulka Devi into a witch, because she had once repulsed the priest's advances towards her, so the priest takes his revenge by pronouncing her a witch. Apart from the story of Dulka Devi, the playwright provides also various instances where women and their daughters fall prey to witch hunting. The male relatives of these people accuse them of practicing witchcraft with the intention of usurping their land and other properties. Thus, the play represents a social issue which is still dominant in many parts of our country, making the lives of the poor and uneducated women completely intolerable. Such killings of women in the name of witch hunting continues even today in the 21st century in certain districts of Bihar or in certain districts of Assam. So Dina Mehta's play seems to communicate the message that despite the unprecedented modern growth that the society has seen in various fields, women in India are still vulnerable at various points, in various spaces, in various geographies, and various socio-cultural and economic levels, and they are always open to various types of abuses. And for this, partly responsible is a woman's traditional mindset. So what we have seen in this module is that activist theatre on women has now started to gain some amount of ground, and there are a number of women playwrights and men playwrights who have turned to activist theatre. So what we might conclude here is the modern mindset, both in men and women, to counter instances of violence and women is what they are all rooting for. The relation between theatre and human rights is something that we must make a point to note. We can definitely consider Getting Away with Murder as an activist play that advocates the basic human rights for women and the female child. Now, although Getting Away with Murder does not stand for radical and overt activism, the activist elements of the play cannot be ignored given the issues represented in this play. So this play by Mehta critiques such violence of women's rights and imposed restrictions on their autonomy by representation through dramatic literature and performance. Thank you.